Hi everyone, my name is Ian and you're watching Big Rock Media. Today we're going to review Catalina State Park, located in sunny southern Arizona just outside of Tucson. Catalina State Park is part of the Arizona State Park system, which encompasses over 30 really wonderful state parks throughout the state, many of which have great camping opportunities. We visited and stayed at many of the Arizona state parks, and we've always found them to be extremely well managed, well run, well maintained, clean, and just really wonderful scenic locations to come either camp or hike or do other activities like biking. So a few things first. So Catalina State Park is located in the community of Oro Valley, which is actually about half an hour north of the main part of Tucson, Arizona. The state park sits at the base of the Catalina Mountains, which are beautiful rugged mountains above you, and also if you go far enough into those mountains, you would actually get to Mount Lemmon. So for the climate, this is really going to be a great place to camp in the fall, winter, and even in the spring. The summer, obviously, being near Tucson, is going to be very hot, over 100 degrees every day during the day. Being located close to Tucson, there's so many things to do near this park within a couple hours or even an hour driving distance. You've got all the biking and hiking trails near the state park. You've got plenty of shopping and restaurants nearby in Oro Valley. You've got the Pima Air and Space Museum down in Tucson. You've got Saguaro National Park. You've got Mount Lemmon. You've got Sabino Canyon. There's so much to do for the outdoor enthusiast. And did I mention over 100 miles of paved dedicated bike paths that go all throughout the valley of Tucson and Oro Valley. It's really wonderful. Getting a reservation at Catalina State Park during the busy season, which is pretty much fall, winter, and spring, is pretty challenging. So you'll need to plan pretty far in advance, about 6 months in advance, unless you get lucky and catch someone who canceled their site. So many of the sites, actually most of the sites, have water and electric hookups, but there are no full hookup sites that include sewer. Now there is a dry camping loop which has no hookups at all. If you're going to be camping here, I would say any time except maybe the months of December, January, February, which are the cool months. If you're camping in any of the other 9 months, you're really going to need your air conditioning if you're in a trailer or an RV. So I would definitely recommend getting a hookup site. We've stayed here twice. The first time we stayed here was in around Christmas time, New Year's, and the temperatures in a day were like in the 70s. I think there was some light rain for a couple of the days. The second time we stayed here was in early April, like late March, early April, and by then the daytime temperatures were already into the 90-degree mark. So yeah, you're definitely going to want that air conditioning. So there's a lot to love about Catalina State Park, and let me start to run through some of these things. What are the highlights? So the sites are spaced very far apart. There's a lot of room between the sites, and you don't feel like you do in many RV parks and campgrounds where you're just kind of sandwiched all in together like a can of sardines. You don't get that feeling at all, and it's really good planning by the State Parks Department. The views from the campground are beautiful and wonderful. The sun rises and the sun sets with the mountains behind you and the big horizon off to the west. It's really a beautiful place to spend your time, and the days will pass very quickly, even if you don't even leave the campground. As I mentioned before, there's so many things to do in this area. So we have done the tram ride and hiking up in the Sabino Canyon area, which I highly recommend doing that. We visited the Pima Air and Space Museum, which if you've never been there is really one of the premier air and space museums in the entire world. I highly recommend going to that. You've also got Saguaro National Park. There's two sides to Saguaro National Park. There's the west and the east side. And over on the west side, they also have, this is going to be very popular with families, they have like a nature center, or it's kind of like a zoo, honestly. And they have tons of animals and plants on display, a big grounds that, you know, you can spend most of a day exploring that. And it's a really wonderful organization. Another activity I highly recommend doing if you're in this area and you have a few days is take the scenic drive up Mount Lemmon. It's really beautiful. You go from the desert floor in Tucson all the way up this winding road with tons of scenic overlooks, and you end up all the way up in a pine forest up at Mount Lemmon at high elevation. And it's really a top thing to do if you're in the area. I also mentioned a bike path. So if you're into cycling at all, whether by yourself or with your family or your kids, the state park connects directly to the bike path system in the Tucson and Oro Valley, which connects you to over 100 miles of paved, dedicated bike paths, which is just amazing. I've never found another city that has such a dedicated, wonderful, and well thought out bike path system. So from Catalina State Park, you can ride west, you can ride south, you can ride down to Tucson, along the different rivers and drainages. You can connect to anywhere in the valley, and you can ride as far and as long as you want without worrying about cars and traffic and safety concerns. So some other things I like about the state park: the staff are very, very friendly, very attentive, and they keep the campground very clean and very safe. All the guests that typically stay here, you get a lot of snowbird types that come in with their big Class A's, and a lot of families. Just a very nice laid-back crowd. You don't have to worry about crime or theft. It's just a very laid-back atmosphere, and we always enjoy our time here. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the hiking opportunities. So just behind the park to the east, there's a trailhead, and you can hike multiple trails and go up into the wilderness areas, up into the mountains and into the high desert. You're among the saguaro cactus and the beautiful rugged peaks, and it's really, really great. There was a fire here in 2020, I think in June, and it did burn some of the area, but the desert comes back really fast, and in some of the areas you'd be hard-pressed to even notice there really was a fire. The desert bounces back pretty fast after they have a wildfire. Another huge benefit to this park is that while you feel that you're definitely in nature and isolated from the city and really out on your own, you're actually only about a 10-minute drive from a large shopping center just really across the state highway from the park entrance, which has, chained restaurants, and there's a Walmart, and there's other shops and stores to get your camping supplies or stock up your RV or go out to a nice dinner. Also, I have to mention the El Charro Cafe, which is about 10 to 15 minutes to the south on the state highway, which is one of the best Mexican restaurants in the whole country. If you look it up, they have a long, long history. They now have expanded to 3 locations from their original location in downtown Tucson. So it's very hard for me to come up with any negatives about this location, and that's why we keep coming back, and I think our family's going to keep coming back every year in the winter or spring because we enjoy it so much. But if I have to come up with some negatives, I guess the first thing would be that it's just very difficult to reserve. People have discovered this place. You find it all over the RV and travel trailer forums and Facebook groups, and people are always posting about it. So it's very difficult to get a site there, so definitely plan in advance. So that's one downside. The other thing is that there's not a lot of shade, and that's just because, you're in the desert. I mean, you don't have big shade trees to really keep you cool. So keep that in mind. You're definitely going to want to make sure your awning's working, or you bring easy ups. You're probably going to want to have AC in your rig and have that hookup side unless you're in December, January, February, which are the cool and wet months. But other than those two things, it's really hard to find any negatives about this park. It's truly one of our favorite places to stay. So here's a few tips I have if you're planning a trip to this part of Arizona and planning to stay in the state park. So like I said before, definitely try to get a hookup site because you're probably going to want your air conditioning unless you're in those few cool months of the year. The other thing is book early, and we've talked about that, so definitely plan early. The other tip I have is that the best views, if you want to sit outside your trailer and kind of watch the sunset and the sunrise, the best views are going to be to your east and your south. So if you can get a site where your front door and your awning area or your patio area faces the east or the south, that's going to be a big benefit for you. So there's pull-through sites, which are a certain direction, and then there's back-in sites. So if you look at the campground loops, it's pretty easy to figure out, okay, if I back my trailer into this site, I'm going to have my porch facing the east or the south. And we found that to be a very, very big difference and really, really beneficial, especially in the afternoon when it's hot. You can put your awning out and sit out there in the afternoon or evening and watch the beautiful sunset over the Catalina Mountains. A few other things before we start to wrap up this review. I did want to mention that they do have a lot of guided ranger programs because it's part of the state park system. So they have nature walks and bird walks, and I highly recommend taking advantage of some of those if they have those going while you're there. The other thing I wanted to say is that the bathroom facilities are very, very well kept, very well sanitized, very clean, and very up to date. If you want to take showers, if you want to use the restrooms instead of the ones in your RV, you'll have no problem doing that. We've stayed at a number of state parks in Arizona, as I mentioned earlier. We've stayed at Lost Dutchman State Park, we've stayed at Buckskin State Park, and we've stayed down at Karchner Caverns, which I highly recommend. It's like a miniature version of Carlsbad Caverns. But overall, out of all the places we've stayed in Arizona, we definitely would keep coming to Catalina State Park as our number one choice. It's just, the location is amazing. There's so much stuff to do, whether you're just as a couple, you're retired, or whether you have kids, whether you have your family. There's so much fun stuff to do. It's a beautiful location. location. It's convenient. There's shopping and restaurants nearby, and you just can't go wrong staying here. You'll have a very, very wonderful experience. So I highly recommend planning a trip out here. I sincerely hope this review is useful for you. Please let me know any feedback down below in the comments. I do read and respond to pretty much every comment on my YouTube channel, and I really appreciate your feedback and helping me improve. Please subscribe. Please give the video a thumbs up. It really helps out with the YouTube algorithm and helping other people find this video. Thanks for your support. Travel safe out there. Drive safe. Happy camping, and we'll see you in the next review.